all about writing with Ben and Sara.
Welcome back to All About Writing, the podcast that covers everything about the world of writing from the inside out. This is episode 12, part 1 of our series on screenwriting. I'm Sara, here with my co-host Ben, who is an award-winning best-selling author and ghostwriter, editor, and publisher.
And I'm Ben, here with my co-host Sara, who is an award-winning author, screenwriter, editor, and TED Talk presenter. And today, we're going to take a look at the fine art of screenwriting. So I'm really excited here because I'm relatively new to this art form, but Sara is a veteran. She's been doing it for like ages.
Like 50 years at least, definitely 50.
Yeah, she's been doing it since I was in like kindergarten. So, but it is a really interesting topic because mostly we talk about writing books, but screenwriting is quite different. And I think it's fun to sort of explore some of the similarities and some of the differences between novel writing or prose writing and screenwriting. So I'm going to be sort of pitching some questions today because I'm the noob here. And Sara's going to be schooling me on what it is to do screenwriting. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you first off, Sara, if you just tell me, how did you get into screenwriting in the first place?
That's a really good question, and I think I can start. It's been, not that it's been so long, but so much has happened. There's been a pandemic and a strike and and streaming wars. So I started 2017 maybe, and it was on a whim. I was talking to another writer who actually writes children's books, and I write novels, and she was telling me a story that she had always want to make into a novel. And as she was telling me this, it was playing in a movie in my head, and I said, we need to write this as a screenplay. And she's like, I've never written one. And I'm like, me either. But I think we just have to use like a specific font. Like that's all we knew. We knew nothing. And we wrote the first draft of that movie, and it's been through it's been through the ringer, and it has still not been made to this day. But that was the very beginning. We both kind of caught the bug, and we co-wrote a couple of things that were really inspirational to us. Some of the things are kind of still floating around out there, and we've had some nibbles, but that's what started me. And then I don't remember the exact how I got like my first manager and how I got my, but from one of my early managers, I was hired. I happened to he convinced these producers to give me my first screenwriting job, where I was paid to write a feature length rom-com for them based on like 6 pages of notes. And they liked it so much that they hired me again. And then they were sending their screenwriting things out to their bigger producer friends. And then people saw my name on those screenplays, and it just started to catapult. And then it just kind of becomes like practice makes perfect. You start to learn, you start to see how structures put together. You read other scripts and you get better by doing. And now it's now I actually couldn't even tell you how many scripts I have right now on my slate. I think it's like 16 or 18. And that's
Wow.
only been in the past 5, maybe 6 years. So,
Wow.
And I think for us as novel writers, one, it feels easier in a way because it's way less words. We're used to writing 60, 80, 120,000 words, and here's a script that's a couple thousand words. And a pilot for TV is even less. And but it is a different form of media for sure, and you do have to learn how to scale way back, and the economy of words becomes paramount. And then
Yeah, and that's one of the questions I had, is that it seemed to me when I first started that all you're writing is the dialogue, because you don't have to describe what the people look like, you don't have to describe what they're doing, because that's what the actors and the director do. So is screenwriting just the dialogue from a book? Like how does it convert?
There's dialogue, but the dialogue becomes so important because the dialogue is because remember when you're sending a script out, if you're even thinking about dabbling in this, you see it in your head. But you can't write what they call a ton of exposition. You can't have paragraphs of description for anything, the
Mm-hmm.
setting, anything. And so that all has to get ripped away. You have to describe a setting in 1 to 3 sentences max. And yet that has to invoke the tone. Is this a cold place? And you have to use language that's not, super Spartan. You want to have a voice on the page. So if I was going to describe something, I would say, the air was frigid and the mountains you can be descriptive but very like concisely, like, and you wouldn't just say it is cold. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
other thing too. I mean, obviously everything is written in present tense.
Yeah.
And so that feels very weird if you're not used to it. I am, but I know for people who are not, it's a little like weird to always remember you're in present tense when you're writing a script. It's happening right
Yeah.
now, this second. But the dialogue is important, because that's your only chance to put character on the page. And so
Right.
punctuation makes a huge, do you put commas? Do you put ellipses? Do you put, that whole thing becomes part of your character and their voice on the page, and the actor will read that. Um, and yet at the same time, Ben, as you and I know, everything you put on the page has to be done with a grain of salt, because if there's ever anything that cannot be precious that you write, it is a script,
Right.
even more so
Right.
than a book.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that it's an interesting challenge, because as the author of a book, you're in creative control, right? You can decide everything. When you're writing a script, you have to be ready to give it up, because a good actor will take your words and will change some of them because it just seems right in the moment. A good director will go, yeah, okay, I saw what you're trying to do here, but we got to just change it up so that the shot will work. It becomes a collaborative process now. And I guess, well, you tell me, is it fair to say that as the screenwriter, you're the one who's sort of laying the foundation? Like, here's the basics of the story, and then everyone else will build on top of that and perhaps change it.
Yes. Yes, and that's why in a way concept becomes so important when you write a screenplay, more than plot and more than character. Now, someone will say they're looking for plot driven, like a thriller, or they're looking for character driven, like a drama. But in the end, the concept itself
Mm,
has to be it has to grab people and off the page, or have characters that grab people off the page, but in a way like the concept of those characters are what is so interesting to very jaded professionals. And I do think too, to your point, yes, everything that you write will get rewritten 100 times. There will be a director's script. So everything, the directors don't want something from us that say the camera is doing this, we move
mm,
to there, we see this. No, 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 no. They don't want to be told. You're not a
right.
director. You don't get to tell them how they're going to pan to that image or to that person's face at that second. They don't want to see that. But they might put that in to the director's script, which then it
Right.
slowly becomes the shooting script, but it only becomes the shooting script after the line producer gets a hand on it and goes, yeah, we can't afford half the stuff that's on this script. So we're gonna have to cut like these scenes, these characters, no animals, no chill. Like, they'll have a say because it has to fit the budget.
Yeah.
And then even when you're on set, it will change. So if you actually like get a quote final script, and if you watch, we actually did this with the movie National Treasure, big Nicolas Cage movie, right?
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
actually look at the final shooting script, and then you listen to the movie, there are lines in the movie that are not in the final script because they
Wow.
were added in on set or
Yeah.
ad-libbed or something. And so you as the writer, yes, I think that's a great way. You're creating the framework, or you're giving a parameter, and then you have to let your hands off so people can play in the sandbox that you've built. Because if
Mhm.
you don't have hands off, no one will work with you and you will not get a single script made. Period.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's I mean, it's fascinating, just delving into the whole world that is Hollywood is many other shows that we will have. Um, but just as you're starting, like when you wrote your first movie script, how long is a typical screenplay? Like, say, for a feature-length movie, like how many words, how many pages? How do you measure it?
The rule of thumb is a minute a page.
Okay.
So 90 minutes, hour and a half movie, pretty standard. You want to give a little wiggle room on both sides. So you kind of shoot for that 90 to 100 pages for a feature film. Anything more than like 110, and people start looking at you like, do you not know how to be efficient with your words? Like, this is getting a little long. And to be honest, most executives won't even read the whole thing. They'll read the one pager that you made to go with your script before they even touch that script.
Yeah. Now, efficiency, that's a really important thing, which if you're an author, switching over to screenwriting is a really important lesson to learn. I know I learned this really quickly, that as authors, we have all the time in the world, really. I mean, you have to write well, you have to write precisely, you have to write cleverly and efficiently, but you've got all the time in the world, and you can write a big long book, and certainly in some genres, like fantasy, for example, 200,000 words. People love that. Like, they love it. So you can have these vast sweeping epics, but in movies and TV, like in film, like every minute matters, right? So you've got one page and you have got to fit a lot onto that page, because otherwise, not efficient, it's gone.
Well, and everything you do on the page is expensive. Like, we don't think about that when we write books. We're just like writing the story, right? But when you're writing a film, you're like, how expensive is this entire scene that's all CGI?
That's right. That's
And
right.
sometimes you don't want to. You want to just write what you know and then let somebody else come in and just be like, yeah, like, this is a $100 million movie right now. And it's not even like, it's never gonna see the light of day because you're a nobody and it's a $100 million movie because it's all CGI. And that's, and I know you have done some screenwriting too, Ben, that, you in the fantasy sci-fi kind of realm. And, and I think you guys were very aware of how expensive the thing was
Mhm.
that you were building,
Like things like how many characters to have in the scene. Like, as a novelist, I don't know, if I need a character, I throw him in there. With a screenplay, that character is an actor who has to get paid. Like, and the more of them, the more speaking parts you create, the more expensive your show is getting, right? Because I assume actors get paid more if they have lines. So these are things we just don't have to think about as authors, but as screenwriters. I think what I'm getting from you here is, like, efficiency is everything in screenwriting, and it is a very, very fine art to master.
It is. I was actually thinking I'd pull up, just as an example, a description. So when we write descriptions, right, of a fantasy pilot that's currently going out to showrunners with the company that owns the rights to this. And this is the first scene in this winter palace, right? So you haven't
Mm.
seen it yet. Nobody reading the script has seen it yet. And I have to describe it in 3 sentences. Okay.
Okay.
And it's this. The Winter King's palace is lush with silver-veined white marble. Glass and cloth of gold cover the walls. The ceilings soar, and the light crystallizes white and cold. That's it. But yet, you get the feeling of lots of white and gold and high ceilings and coldness and ice. Like, I don't even use the word ice, right? But it's implied,
Mhm.
that it's it's not a like cozy place, you know, and yet it's probably very fancy. Like, you're getting the vibe that it's fancy because I use the word marble and cloth of gold. And so, but that's it. That's the only descriptor in the entire pilot of that set. And also, it's the only time that's the pilot, right? And there'll be 9 scripts possibly, or 8 scripts. That is the only time that set will ever be described. It won't be
Mhm.
re-described later in a
Right.
different uh, episode or anything. It'll just be Winter Palace. Boom, no description.
Right. That's fascinating. And the comparison to a novel, where, as an editor, what I would tell an author if they brought me that description, say, no, you got to slow it down. You got to get into the head of your point of view character. You got to reveal these little things organically as they move through the scene, and it'll probably take 3 pages to get that description out as other things are happening. But with a screenplay, nope, boom, there it is.
Yep.
Run with it. We're moving on. So
yep.
That's really cool. That's a really good example. Something else too about structure, and this one is I think it confounds a lot of people. Like novels can be written in any structure people want, but sort of the 3-act structure is a very common one. The 3-act play is where we take that from, and it just works for novels. But I understand that TV in particular can be tricky for that, and movies as well. So how do you approach the structure in a screenplay?
That's a good question. And honestly, as you're saying this, I'm realizing that in a short while, some of this will be moot, because with streaming, the structure is changing. It used to be, especially for TV, it would be structured around commercial breaks.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually gotten pages from executives who say, I need you to write this pilot in a 6-act structure. I've also received information from producers for like a 90-minute movie for TV, a TV movie. They need a 9-act structure.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I don't know, because when I got the 9-act one, I sent it to the other exec who sent me the 6-act one. And I was like, which one's right? And he's like, I've never heard of the 9-act one. And I'm like, I've never heard of any of this. But so it is it used to be structured around TV breaks, truly. So like a Hallmark movie is a 9-act film because there's usually 9 commercial breaks in that hour and a half. Every 10 minutes, there's a break.
Wow.
And so you kind of had to leave them hanging so that they would come back and wait what happens next. But it's Hallmark, so of course we all know. And
how do they get there? That's the key.
But how do they get there? I tried really hard, and I felt like I maybe was not cut out to be a Hallmark movie writer, only because I kept challenging the status quo. And they were like, that's nice, but also no. And also, we're not doing that either. And also, stop trying to rock the boat. The answer is still no. But, so I think for people who are just getting started, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing a 3-act pilot or a 3-act feature. And once you're very familiar with how that flows and the pacing is more important in a script than it ever is in a novel. A novel, we can take our times, right? You can have slow moments because you're building character. You need to have these interactions because it'll matter later and it'll be a more emotional payoff. There's no room for that to breathe on the page. It might happen during the edit process where they drag out a scene, or where if you hear about how like during certain episodes, actually even I don't know if you watched The Last of Us, but The Last of Us was, that just came out the first season, and there was one episode that was a lot slower than any other episode that had been out. I think it was the 3rd or 4th one, and and it was really long. Really long. Like it's a long for a show. It was over an hour. And all they said was, well, we let the characters, the director let them breathe. They let the scene breathe. And that just meant those long, slow scenes. That's unusual. It's very unusual because you're trying to hit everything is all economy of timing, because time is money in Hollywood. And the faster you can shoot something, it's cheaper. The shorter something is, it's cheaper. All of that is part of the equation that is not when it comes down to writing a book. And so the acts are a good way to get started, but I also feel like if you're writing a little bit of an avant-garde film or an art film, you are not bound by those laws at all.
Yeah, fair. So if I'm going to get started writing screenplays, is there any particular software that you recommend that I use?
I've been on you about this. Yes. Yes.
Maybe.
Final draft is the industry standard. There used to be a different one like Magic or something. There was something else for a short time or maybe a while, but it's gone away. I've actually only used Final Draft. Everybody I know in the industry uses Final Draft. And if you submit something that is not in Final Draft, it won't even be looked at because they will be able to tell the minute they're looking at the title page and they will be like, oh, someone who wasn't even bothered to get like the industry standard, and they won't
Right.
even read it. And it's not super expensive once you buy it. It's always on your computer. I think okay, like every couple of years there's an upgrade, but it's very negligible. I think a lot of people who had, Final Draft 11 like never upgraded to 12 because it was like it's not even like better. Like, but uh but it's a small investment in your career, and it is a necessary one if you truly mean to be serious about starting to submit your work.
If for someone who's used to say using Word or using Google Docs or what's the other one? I don't know, it escapes me right now. But a typical word processor, is it a big jump to move to this software? The functionality is basically the same.
Yes, it is. It's very user friendly. It almost like you think it's supposed to be harder. It's not. It's very user friendly. I think if you have absolutely no idea about what a screenplay looks like, you should probably like Google one and look at how, the descriptions are, and the scene headings are, and how dialogue works on
Mm,
the page. And then also, try not to get super fancy in the beginning, like with montages and with, fade in and outs and all. You can, but they're kind of superfluous, especially once you can sell a script without a lot of those bells and whistles or like the dual talking over each other stuff. Like
right,
it gets a little messy real quick if you do that, just because it looks overdone. So
right.
basic is best.
Okay. Yeah. And is there an easy way to find scripts to look at? Like you said, to look at some. Like, do I just Google them and find them,
Yes.
or is there like a
Yes.
place to recommend?
Yes, you can also, there are people in Hollywood who like have access to all the scripts, and like for a nominal like $10 a script you can get a specific one. But no, many are quite easy, or even just Googling screenplays and if
Yeah.
you have no clue. Yeah.
So
It's
if you've never actually seen one before, yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
That's fair. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess a big question, just one industry question here about agents. Like as authors, unless we're going to self-publish, we want to look at the traditional world. We need an agent. Um, it's pretty hard to self-publish a film, so you're probably going to need some kind of help. So you probably need an agent, I assume. And so, when do you need an agent? How do you get them? That sort of thing.
I would recommend not looking for any representation until you have a body of work, several things, not just one script. Nobody will sign you with one script. They
Okay.
might sign you with 10 or five really good ones, especially if they're all different genres, maybe a pilot here, a short film there, a full length feature, and a couple different genres, because they're going to want to see that you are a good writer across different genres and across different formats. And having that kind of diversity shows them that you are not going to be pigeonholed where they can only get you a job if they sell a feature of yours. If they
Right.
can see that you write TV, well, but maybe I can get you in a TV room because they don't make money unless you do, just like any other agent. And so they want to make sure that they're signing someone who can be quite diverse and can fit in a lot of boxes, because that guarantees or has a better guarantee of getting you as a creator in a paid position somewhere.
Now
And
that's really interesting. Sorry if I can just interrupt for a sec, just
yeah,
because it's so different from being an author, where they want you to define yourself. Like if you, Sarah, major name as a historical fiction author, if you were to suddenly come out with, I don't know, some kind of sci-fi horror, New York wouldn't know what to do with you. Like, well, but Sarah Dahlman's fans are here. We can't sell that. So we're actually, as authors, we are encouraged by New York to pigeonhole ourselves, and this is what you do. stick with it because that's what we can sell. Very interesting. Hollywood is the exact opposite. They want to see that you can do everything.
Well, and you will at some point get known for something, right? That's why certain directors and producers and stuff, they get known for doing certain types of films. They have kind of a signature look, right? Scorsese has kind of a vibe. Like he doesn't do rom-coms, right? Like he does a lot more darker and grittier things. And so everybody has a kind of a calling card as time goes on. And there are things that I've done that I'll get an idea for like a family, like an animated film, and I'll write the initial one pager. I'll think it's really cool. I'll run it past my kids, and my manager will say, "That's great. Put a pin in that. Don't bother to write the script because if you want to get into animation, that's a whole different ball game, and like then you're kind of stuck in animation." So there's still some places where like, do you really want to go that direction? Because then you're really stuck. But for the most part, like you have to show diversity because it shows that you are flexible. And, like I even, had a point where my management was like, please, can you do something like with cell phones and not corsets? Can we just diversify a little bit? So I was like, sure, no problem. Here we go. Here's this and this and this and this and this and this. He's like, okay, enough. But and then to circle back with that too, I'm saying manager, you're saying agent, and I want to clarify that in Hollywood, where scripts are concerned, you can have a manager who can sell your work. They can get you in a writer's room for TV. They can sell your pilot, your whole TV series. They can sell your feature film, all of that stuff. They cannot, and they can read contracts coming down, but they cannot negotiate the contract for you. They're not bonded to do that. It is illegal. And so they have a specific use to a point, and then you would either have to hire your own entertainment lawyer, or if you have an agent, then and your book agents, unless their agency is bonded to sell scripts, they cannot. So my book agent, she can read my scripts, she can give me opinions, but she can do nothing with them. She is legally not allowed. She'd have to pay, I think she had said like it's like $9,000 a year to be bonded to like be a script agent. So she is just a book agent. And then I have a rep who's actually a talent rep at a large agency in LA who handles my unscripted stuff, my reality stuff, if you will. But if and when I need an agent for anything to do with my scripts, she would be able to circle in a screenwriting agent, a script agent. But until I really need one, I don't want one because I'm paying 10% to all these people out of my pocket when I get paid. So until I need the script agent, I am fine with just a manager. So, and it is sometimes easier to get a manager, but you have to make sure the manager has the connections in the things that you do. I once had an awesome manager. He was like a father figure, but he really only lived in the horror lane. So I don't do horror. So he really didn't have the connections to like get my historical fiction stuff moving. You know what I mean? So,
yes.
So you will eventually, as you go, you will have both an agent for your scripts and you will have a manager for your scripts / your entire career. They will be able to direct you a lot more than your agent will and say, this is not a good use of your time. Whereas your agent's just like, I'm going to handle the contract. I'm going to handle the money. I'm going to like represent you in the room. So,
Right. Man. When I first got to New York, I thought it was overwhelming and complicated. And wow, now I'm looking at LA, just like, oh, wow. Yeah. It's you gotta want it. You gotta want it bad, I think is what we're saying here. But that's a whole other topic.
it is.
I think we're going to have a whole series on screenwriting. So we're going to dive into lots of these things in more depth one at a time. But today was just sort of an overview of screenwriting and, some of the differences from novel writing, how it has to be so efficient. You have to really think about the costs. You have to understand that stuff is going to get changed, by the various people. and there's a whole new ecosystem of people, professionals that you got to work with when you get there. So I certainly enjoy writing screenplays. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's been great to sort of dip my toe into this world, and then just see Sara doing butterfly strokes out there, just crushing it with her screenplays. It's been inspirational. But I think as an intro, I think that's our show for today. So thank you very much, Sara, for sharing everything. And to everyone who's been with us today, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our chats. And feel free to leave a review. It really does help us a lot. If you want to catch up with Sara, you can do so at saradahman.com or on Instagram.
And you can also find Ben at ben@rcoles.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. I'll just reiterate what Ben said. Thanks for joining us today on this Screenwriting 101, the beginning of a big saga. Please contact us if there's anything you'd like us to cover, if there's any tidbits we discussed today that really piqued your interest. And we'll see you again when we next chat all about writing.
This has been All About Writing with Ben and Sara.